Good morning. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm sure it's much better to be in here than in the heat outside. My name is Gautam Raghavan. I work here at the White House in the Office of Public Engagement as a liaison to the LGBT and AAPI communities, so lots of letters and alphabets there. The Office of Public Engagement, for those of you who are not familiar with what we do, we're essentially the front door to the White House. So our job is to engage communities and community leaders across America in the work of the federal government, the work of the White House, and really have a conversation with all of you and people across the country about what we're doing and what we could do better and how you can be a part of that process. So this event is very much a part of what we do in OPE, which is bringing in community leaders and folks from all over the country to talk about their experiences and the work that we're doing here. So thank you for being here. And I really want to thank ICASU for their leadership and hard work in putting this event together. So please join me in giving them a strong round of applause. And I know June, Melinda, Michelle, and Nicole, I don't think you're all here. Some of you are, and I think Michelle's waiting outside for folks who are at the gate. But thank you all for your help in putting this together and your leadership and everything you do every day on behalf of API students everywhere. So we're excited to have you all here. I thought it'd be interesting to let you know a little bit about who's in the room right now and folks who will be in here shortly. We have students from the following states, and hold your applause. I know people like to do the shout-out state thingy, but California, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Kansas, Massachusetts, Maryland, Minnesota, North Carolina, Nebraska, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, Virginia, Washington State, my home state, and Wisconsin. Did I miss any states? Iowa, there we go. Well, good to have you here, Iowa. So congratulations to all of you for being here, and I do mean congratulations because it's quite a feat that you're here. I know that you all have busy things going on this summer, whether it's summer internships or community service or classes or just spending time with your friends and family. Thank you for being here and taking the time to come to our nation's capital to do this, and I apologize again for the heat. I just want to take a moment to frame the purpose of this event. What this is about is engaging emerging leaders from all over the country about the work that we're doing, and more importantly, empowering you to take action once you go home. We don't want this just to be us talking to you. We want this to be the first in a series of conversations, and we want you to use this opportunity to learn some lessons or pick up a few tips and tricks and go back home to your colleges or communities and take action. So you'll hear this morning from a panel of federal leaders as well as a panel of student leaders, and that's intentional because we want this to be an exchange of ideas and experiences. And then this afternoon you'll have the chance to participate in a couple of workshops on various different issues. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear about not just the challenges and obstacles you face, but we also want to hear about where you've been successful. So we want to hear about your best practices, lessons learned, things that you can share with other people in this room because they're probably going to want to hear from you. So I have a couple of quick asks for you before we turn it over to our keynote speaker. First is we're going to pass out an engagement survey to all of you, either later this morning or this afternoon, and we'd ask you to fill that out. Each of you represents hundreds, or in some cases thousands, of people who can't be here today. And so we need your help identifying those key community leaders and ensuring that they're a part of our process and our outreach as well. The second is we want you to tell people you were here. And for those of you who are watching live out there in cyberspace, we want you to tweet about being here. We want you to blog about this. We want you to use the hashtag WHAAPI. I think ICASU's tag it's ICASU, so that should be easy. And the White House one is just the White House. And then I think Chris and John will both tell you what their Twitter handles are as well. And for those of you who are watching live at home, you can also tweet your questions, and we'll try to get to those later today. And then most importantly, we want you to identify one thing that you can do coming out of this event, and then we want you to commit to doing it. Whether it's writing a blog post or writing an op-ed or organizing a group of students at your campus or hosting a roundtable with a member of the administration who's coming through town, we want you to really take advantage of those opportunities and be a part of our conversation. Last, before turning it over to Chris, I just want to share one of my favorite quotes, which is, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably on the menu. And I say that to drive home the importance of participating in decision-making processes. So, we need you in the room when these decisions are being made. We need you to tell your stories, to express your perspective. And I know that because this is a room full of leaders, we don't just want you at the table, we want you running the meeting. So please use this day to start that process or to continue it. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our keynote speaker, Chris Liu, who is Assistant to the President, Cabinet Secretary, and Co-Chair of the White House Initiative on AAPIs. So please give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Gautam, and welcome all of you to the White House. I have to say, after 3.5 years, it never gets tired in saying that. I also want to thank all the people who are out watching in cyberspace. First of all, thank you to Gautam and Jason, I think is back there. They are really the dynamic force behind our AAPI outreach efforts, and they bring such great energy and enthusiasm to this effort. So we are very lucky to have them on our team. I always find it funny to talk to a group of AAPI young people, because at heart I still sort of think of myself as a young person, although my wife reminded me this morning that at 46 I'm probably not that young anymore. But I still remember very distinctly the first time I ever came into this building, and it was in 1985, and I was invited to an event just like this, that there were an outreach effort that was happening, now it's going to sound like ancient history, during the Reagan administration. And I was a sophomore in college. I know, it sounds right. I might as well just said the Washington administration or the Jefferson administration. And I was invited to a session of senior Reagan administration officials, just like what we're having here today. And President Reagan stopped by. And I don't remember, candidly, what anybody said, but I remember a really dramatic impact it had on me, and just hearing about important people discussing the issues of the day. And it really energized me and motivated me to want to pursue a career in public service. So I have to say, back at that point, I'm fairly sure I would not have imagined standing in front of a similar crowd 25-some years later, giving kind of a similar presentation. But let me tell you a little bit about what I do here and some of the things that we've been focusing on for the AAPI community. As Gautam mentioned, I wear 2 different hats in the administration. My day job is helping to manage the cabinet for the president, and my night and evening job is serving as the co-chair of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans. My wonderful co-chair is Arnie Duncan, our Secretary of Education. And both of these jobs really have the same essential mission, which is to ensure that our federal government works as efficiently and as effectively for our customers, and that's all of you, the American people. And in order to find out what issues our customers want us to work on, we are out crisscrossing the country talking to groups like yourself. And that's why over the past 3.5 years, not only myself, but the commissioners and the staff of the White House Initiative have gone to more than 50 cities, and they've talked to more than 25,000 people around the country. And this face-to-face dialogue is really just one of the ways that we're trying to engage in with all of you. We have a great Facebook page. We have a wonderful website. We obviously are on Twitter as well. And I always laugh a little bit when I talk about Twitter, because I can now sort of say hashtag and not, chuckle that I have no idea what hashtag means. But 6 months ago, when I did a session just like this for another group of AAPI youths, that morning, literally, my staff set up my Twitter handle, and I now know what a Twitter handle is. And at the end of at the end of my talk, I said, hey, I've got this Twitter handle now, and I challenge all of you to get me to 100 followers. And that group basically did it. So I checked this morning, I'm up to about 1,300 now, which is pretty good in 6 months. So I'm going to challenge all of you to get me to 1,400. And not only the folks in this room, but the folks watching in cyberspace. You can follow me on Twitter at ChrisLu44, ChrisLu44. I'm always a little hesitant to do that, because what ends up happening is that half the room starts tweeting about some ridiculous thing that I said or questioning one of the facts I gave. So feel free to do that, and if you have questions, I'll try to answer them after the fact. ChrisLu44, and as Gautam said, we're using the hashtag AAPIWH, which you should use if you're tweeting here or at home. But as I said, we travel around the country, and one of the reasons we travel around the country is that it's important to hear from people about the issues that are on their minds. I think back about a session that we did recently in Atlanta, a couple months back, and we hold these regional forums, and we were down in Atlanta for folks down in the Southeast region. And in this audience of 400 people, we had this amazing diversity of people. We had recent immigrants from Bhutan who didn't speak English. We had upper middle class college students. We had advocates who had been spending their entire lives trying to help our community. We had small business owners who had basically run everything from nail salons to high-tech businesses. And we had people that literally had traveled hundreds of miles and by bus to tell us their stories from places like Mississippi and Louisiana and Florida. And with each of these stories that came out and each of these conversations, there was one constant theme, which is that people were concerned about whether the American dream was still possible for all of them. And all of you know this as well, whether you're a recent immigrant, whether your parents were immigrants, whether your grandparents are immigrants, you know that there's a basic promise in America, that if you work hard, you can do well enough to buy a home, send your kids to college, save for your retirement. And these days, unfortunately, that dream is out of reach for far too many people. And as all of you know, some have done very well during the most recent economic downturn. But the vast majority of Americans, the vast majority of people in our community haven't done as well. And what they've continued to find is that their paychecks keep staying the same, and yet their costs keep going up. So that's why the President Obama, and the entire administration has made it our mission to try to restore the middle class. And that's not only just Asian Americans, that's all Americans. And that's a challenge, since we are now only just beginning to emerge from really the greatest downturn since the Great Depression. But let me talk to you about a couple of things that we've done over the past 3.5 years. First of all, we have created 4.5 million jobs, 4.4 million jobs to be precise, over the past 28 months. American manufacturing is creating jobs for the first time since the late 1990s. Because of the actions of the president, the American auto industry is now growing again. We've taken unprecedented steps to help small businesses, including providing 18 tax cuts to small business owners, including 1.5 million small businesses that are owned by Asian Americans. On the healthcare front, the president has passed a historic health reform bill that will not only provide insurance to 30 million Americans, but just as importantly, provide important protections to hundreds of millions of others who already have health insurance. So let me tell you a little bit about that healthcare law. For instance, the new healthcare law eliminates lifetime coverage, limits on coverage, for 105 million Americans, including 5.5 million AAPIs. Last year, the law provided 54 million Americans, including 2.7 million Asian Americans, with some kind of preventive service, something like a flu shot, a mammogram, a pap smear, a colon cancer screening. And for all of you, the young adults in the room, the law allows you to stay on your parents' insurance. And that's a pretty big deal. And that will end up helping 97,000 Asian Americans because of this one provision. In the area of higher education, we've taken historic steps to help make college a reality for everybody, helping to fulfill really one of those fundamental dreams that all of our parents have, which is to gain a higher education. In fact, later today, the president will be signing a bill in the East Room of the White House that will effectively prevent your student loan interest rates from doubling. And had that not occurred, that would have cost you an additional $1,000 a year. So that's a significant step to help young people like yourselves afford college. So this administration really has made an unprecedented commitment in so many ways to the AAPI community. But the president has also made clear to us that nobody should be invisible to their government. And that's one of the reasons why we go out and we talk to so many different groups. And that's also critical because, as all of you know, notwithstanding some of the recent studies that have come out showing about how great our community is, our community is not a monolithic one as well. There are people that are doing very well, and then there are people who are not doing as well. Let me just read you a couple of the statistics. 1 out of every 6 Asian Americans lack health insurance, and they suffer disproportionately from diseases like hepatitis B. We have some of the highest rates of poverty in our community. 38% among 30% of Cambodians are living in poverty. Even among Chinese Americans, who we normally think of as a more affluent group, when you look at places like New York's Chinatown, 35% of the children live in poverty. In the area of education, we have children of opportunity and we have children of need. Obviously, many of you are going to some of the best schools we have in the country. But you also know that among large parts of our community, higher education is not a reality for many people. For instance, among Southeast Asian Americans, the high school dropout rate is 40%. 40% for Laotians and Cambodians. I mean, that's staggering. So I would put the president's record on AAPI issues against any administration. Yet at the end of the day, all of us know that government can't be the answer to all of our problems. The problems are just too extensive and government's resources are too scarce. And that's why in the end, gatherings like this are so important and why it was important for me to come here to talk to all of you. Because as all of us know, change just doesn't happen here in Washington. It has to happen around the country. You know, all of you already know that because you're working in your high schools, you're working in your colleges, you're working in your neighborhoods to improve the lives of the people that live there. And that's important because far too often we in Washington simply see statistics. All of you around the country are seeing people, you're seeing problems, and you're looking for those creative solutions to how to help solve those problems. So I want to encourage all of you to learn more about our community. Not only those parts of the community that are doing well, but those parts that aren't doing as well. I also hope you'll learn about some of the things that we are doing in the administration to help the AAPI community. And I also want you to be very honest and very candid and very vocal about what we are not doing as well as we could be doing, or things that we ought to be focusing on. And that's why what Gautam talked about, the engagement, is so critical. We need to hear from all of you about what we should be doing better. And finally, and most importantly, I want to encourage all of you to consider spending some time in public service. And it doesn't have to be your entire career as I've done, whether it's simply volunteering in your neighborhood, learning about the issues, being engaged in civic activities. I've worked in the federal government for about 17 years right now, and I can think of no more noble cause. And I hope that if I come back to the White House 25 years from now, one of you is standing up on stage giving kind of a similar presentation. And in my heart of hearts, I'll still think I'm a young AAPI person 25 years from now. So I'm expecting great things from all of you. I know I'm going to be talking to some of you later in the day, and as I said, I look forward to reading your tweets and your questions online, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you very much.
All right, so just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. One is for those of you who at some point want to step outside, please make sure you don't leave the complex, because if you leave the complex and turn in your badge, you won't be able to get a new one, so please don't leave the White House complex. The other thing is please stay hydrated because it's really hot outside, and apparently there have been a couple of incidents of people fainting, so just I'll put that out there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Tanko from the White House Initiative on AAPIs, who has really been instrumental in helping to put this event together. So thank you, Jason, who will come up here and introduce our next panel.
How's everyone doing this morning? Good?
Not so good.
All right, great. So good morning again, everyone. Welcome again to the White House. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Jason Tanko. I'm the advisor on public engagement with the White House Initiative on AAPIs and Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And I also serve as the initiative's liaison to the Office of Public Engagement here at the White House. So as you all know, I worked with you all to get in, so I'm glad that you all are here. Before we begin, I actually wanted to do a quick roll call of who's in the room. So how many are current college students right now? Current college students. Okay, so that's most people in the room. Are there any high school students? Awesome. All right, so we have a couple. Recent graduates. Any recent graduates? Okay. So mostly college students, recent graduates. So before I introduce today's distinguished panelists, I actually wanted to talk briefly about the title of our panel, Breaking the Bamboo Ceiling. So despite AAPIs being the fastest growing ethnic group in the nation, we're still underrepresented in many areas of society. As we all may already know, AAPIs are often subject to stereotypes of the model minority myth, seen as being quiet, obedient, subservient, rather than speaking up, taking risks, or being aggressive. So these perceptions, combined with cultural barriers, can sometimes impede on our progression up the social ladder, thus making it more difficult for our community to attain senior management positions. So that's where the term breaking the bamboo ceiling comes from. We may even sometimes feel like we have to work twice as hard or constantly prove ourselves just in order to get to where others are on the ladder. Despite these challenges, we should also be proud of those who have either defied the odds or challenged these stereotypes to get to where they are today. So I'm honored to be joined by 3 trailblazers in the federal government, in the AAPI, AAPIs in the Obama administration, and I can say with confidence that each of them has definitely contributed to help breaking the bamboo ceiling. So you all have their bios, so I don't want to repeat that information, but I'd like to ask them to just introduce themselves, take 1 to 2 minutes to talk about their current position, what they do, what their agency does, basically answering the most frequently asked question in Washington. So, what do you do?
Everybody's pointing to me to start, so I guess I'll start. I'm Georgia Ewan, Deputy Undersecretary at the Department of Education. And many of the things that Chris just talked about that are related to education are within the policy areas that I work on. I do all of the policy for higher education and help with the Undersecretary to define those policy areas, as well as help oversee federal student financial aid, which maybe many of you are recipients of. So we are responsible for not only getting that aid into your hands so that you can go to school, but also ensuring that the schools that receive the aid from you are doing well by you, and also ensuring the integrity of that program. We also are working with AAPIs, the Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander serving institutions. The AAPIs are institutions that have at least 10% of their student populations identified as Asian American, and we have grant programs that go specifically to those institutions to help them serve you better as institutions of higher education. Chris mentioned also that Secretary Duncan is a co-chair of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, and that's a really important part of the mission of our agency. We house all of the White House initiatives for minority students and minority people, and that's a really important part of what we do in the Undersecretary's office. So that's basically what I do.
Thank you. My name is Thomas Fan. I'm a senior career executive member of the Federal Service. I'm working for Office of Science as a director for Office of Business Policy and Operations since 2009. Recently, I'm serving as senior advisor for Office of Scientific and Technical Information. The mission of Energy Department is to ensure America's security and prosperity by addressing its energy, environmental, and nuclear challenge, also through transformative science and technology solutions. I also serving as a White House Initiative Interagency Working Group designee, also serving as the Executive Director for Asian American Government Executives Network. Our goal is to promote, expand, and support federal career members from year 13, 14, 15, encouraging them to stepping up to become a senior leader in the federal government to break the bamboo ceiling. I also serving as a local community as an advisor for the IG community in Montgomery County.
Thank you. And good morning, everybody. I'm Anna Ma, and I serve as the Chief of Staff for the Secretary of Labor at the Department of Labor. And basically my job is, some folks would say, is the number 3 person at the department, handling about 17,000 employees, which basically at the Department of Labor, we oversee your, kind of like your working career. We have offices, basically employment and training, which kind of puts together the training programs and administers, various employment programs, along with retirement, along with, making sure that an organization such as OSHA, which oversees making sure that your workplace is safe, which is really important, and also, making sure that overall we're there at every step of your career. And more or less, I kind of joke that I do whatever Chris tells me to do, so.
So as you can see, clearly we have really distinguished AAPI senior officials in the Obama administration here with us today. But I was wondering if you all could actually share your story of how you got to where you are. You know, what sparked your interest in federal service? And also, what were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome along the way?
I'll start again. So I thought it was really, I think it's really interesting to start a panel like this by using the phrase, breaking the bamboo ceiling. I think as a very young person, I had the great fortune as a high school student to be encouraged to do a senior project on women as Asian Americans. This was in the dark ages, in the 70s, in the early 70s. And one of the things that sparked my interest then, it was sort of almost, this is pre-Ms. Magazine, was there's two stereotypes that I think women grow up with. You know, one is that we're really bad at science and math, and that, you know, we're really good communicators, and we should have follow certain career paths. And then as Asian Americans, you sort of get hit by the opposite kind of stereotype. And I had a real curiosity at the ripe age of 17 to ask the question, you know, how do these stereotypes really, when they're in one person, embodied in one person, how do they guide your career? How do they guide your thinking, what you feel confident about doing and not doing? And that theme seemed to just carry me through a lot of interests. I was really fortunate to have teachers and professors throughout my academic life who encouraged me. So my first career was really as a geologist. I went all the way through graduate school as a geologist, and then switched careers and became a lawyer. And through all of that, I think it always was that there was somebody ahead of me, sort of whose path I could understand and see. Sometimes Asian American women, sometimes not. And also what I would call now, in today's parlance, a sponsor, not just a mentor, but someone who actually could see me for what I was doing and could help me, lift me up, and say, you know, you really ought to look at this opportunity or that opportunity. Even going to law school from a career in geology, people often say, how did that happen? And, you know, part of it was I became place-bound after I got married, but a friend of mine just said, you would really be interested in the law. I know there's a law school down the road. I know the assistant dean. You know, let me make an appointment for you just to go find out if that's something you want to do. So, you know, fast forward 25 years, I was a general counsel at 2 institutions of higher education, and the Obama administration came in, and again, a colleague who was close to the transition team said, gee, you know, they're looking for someone who does higher ed law. That's obviously you. And let me put your name in. And now I'm here, and I spent 2 years at the department as deputy general counsel doing all the higher education pieces, and this year became deputy undersecretary. So it's a combination of never actually recognizing that there was a ceiling, always having people above that ceiling to say, you know, reaching down, reaching out, and saying, I want to help you because I think you could go places, and maybe you don't see this for yourself, but I see it for you. And it's also responding to that. You know, it's risky. I've moved my family back and forth across the country 3 times at periods when most people would not do it. You know, I had a son who was a teenager at the time, and also, you know, just people don't move that late in their lives, and we just always viewed it as the next opportunity. So I guess that's, I feel like I ended up here not because I had seen this path always, but because I responded to other people seeing a path, and also because it's always been fascinating and interesting, and I have to say every move I've made has been really interesting and something that I never would regret doing.
Great, thank you very much. As you know, my name is Thomas Fan, and let me share you, when Chris mentioned about he feel old in front of you, I feel even older, but my heart is, my age is stopped counting when I'm 21. And at home right now, you know, we have a twin, 1 boy, 1 girl, and my wife always say, you make me feel like I have a triplet, you know. Because I always play with them, and I forgot that I always think I'm a 13, you know, teenager. And it is my honor and very emotional for me right now to stand in front of you, to share with you the importance of engage and go out there and speak up and serving community. let me share you quickly my story, because I can tell my story day after day after day, many days. But I joined, I was born in Vietnam, and I joined the Republic of Vietnam as a young officer in 1972 when I graduated high school as a high schooler. Most of my friends get drafted to the military. I didn't get drafted because two things. I get admitted to the university, but also my father is, the high level in government. But then I decided to join the military because all of my friends go, so I go. And also they say it's cool when you become a young officer, a lot of girls like you, so they say. So anyway, but I make that decision, and make long story short, I go through the war, I get wounded a couple of times, get survived it many times, miraculously. I couldn't believe that I still survive today, Make one quick event, like one time I stepped on with my radio and my sergeant, and we know we die on that day, and we count 1, 2, 3, we want to jump backward, and all I do, I remember my mom say, when you at the last minute of your life, just look up the sky and pray. And that's what I did. I say, save me. And suddenly, we hear a loud explosion, and my radio man, we get cut in half. My sergeant lost 2 arms and 1 leg. And I stay in the swamp in the middle of the night, and I learned that I didn't get any injury. And I survived miraculously. I got captured in 1975 when the war is over, and I was in a communist prisoner of war. They call it a re-education camp or concentration camp in the jungle for 5 years. I can't tell you all of the detail right now, but I get tortured, I get beat up and get executing, try to escape many times. I survived a couple of times and very hungry all of the time. Eat everything, move in the jungle, And I escaped and I survived it in 1980 from the camp, go to Saigon, find out that my mom, my sister, everybody become homeless, sleep on the street. And my mom said, I cannot live here, so I go to the United States. She said, you have to go to the United States to start your life again. And fortunately, I know a couple of people to organize the escape. I joined them. I go to one of the Navy bases. I'm familiar when I was in the Army. We stole the Coast Guard boat, the communist Coast Guard boat, not and we take 58 villagers with us, traveling across the Pacific Ocean for 17 days. 5 days, the engine explode, the food run out. We have 12 days no food. We eat live sushi every day, it's good. And we drink rainwater. We survived miraculously on that ordeal too. We got pirated 3 times. They raped a young girl in our boat. They tried to kill people. I have to stand up as a leader. I begging them, and they almost killed me too. But we got rescued by United Nations ship at the 17th day when we know that that's the last day of our life. And we go to the U.S. Delegation refugee camp. In the refugee camp, I tell you, when you learn something on the job, really save you go to the United States faster. It's the one funny story I never forgot is when I was in the Army, I worked with all of the GI, American soldier, and all of them back then, they have a transistor, radio transistor, the small radio. So I listened to all of the rock music, and I remember them all, and I didn't know what it meant. When I in the refugee camp, I sit in a hammock, I lay in a hammock, and I sing every day. First time I ever saw your face by Roberta Flack, don't let me down, sugar, sugar, and, let it be, and I have no clue what it means, and then one of the U.S. officers came to me, wow, your English so good, and I knocked my head, I didn't know what he asking me about, and he said, do you want to become the interpreter? I said, yes, I am, so I do the result of my interpretation. Many family want to go to the United States, go to Canada, or many people want to go to Canada, end up in Australia. So I make a lot of assumptions. But I entered the United States in 1981, I tell you. And I start my life from scratch here. My memory lose everything. I lost a lot of my memory. And the high school didn't accept me. The university didn't accept me. They say, your English is terrible. I failed my TOEFL, test of English for foreign language, a zillion times, and nobody wanted me. So I work as at nighttime as an assembler, $3 now from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I volunteer to clean the lab in George Mason, and finally The dean, the chair for the electrical engineer school in George Mason say, "Why you doing here?" I say, "I want to go to university, nobody accept me." He said, "Well, you Asian, you must be good at math and science, you know." But I tell you, I never believed one day I become an engineer. I grew up poetic. I write poems, I like literature. I want to become a businessman, political science, or a lawyer. And he said, "Well, take one class. If you pass, I let you enter the school." And I'm miserable for that circuit, electric circuit number 1. My friend read one chapter 1 hour, run around to have friends. I read one chapter 3 days, 4 days. I have a big dictionary, but I graduated as an engineer at high school, and I joined Johns Hopkins as my master's degree in engineer, and I worked my way up. I joined the government. My heart always called me for the life of service, so I joined the government in 1990, and I never regret since. And I moved my way up to become break the bamboo ceiling, like you see. If you see in the government AAPI, a lot of GS13 and then a big drop because of where you change between the technologies to become management or supervisory. Because there's a lot of people willing to pass that nudge or push from 13 to become 14 supervisor. And then from 14 to 15, it grow up very high. And then from 15 up, it drop again because not a lot of support or encouragement for you to become senior executive. So through many years, make long story short, in my 12 years as a GS15, I determined to want to become senior executive, not because of title, not because of money, because I want to show that if I get out from concentration camp, if I lost my memory, if I have started my life from scratch, and I can become a leader, all of you can become a leader. And how many of you here born in here, United States? Raise your hand. See, 90% of you born in here, and you have that luxury. You have that, the power, what you learn in this country, but also you have the trait of your culture of Asian. You have to combine East and West together, and you become a great leader out there. So let's see what else. I think I run out of time right here, but I mean, yeah. So that's where one thing I have for you is very clear. The most important I want to mention today, the intelligence you can learn from school. But in today's environment, when you live in the culture of today, many things around you, you have to do everything at the same time, the concurrent engineering or concurrent solution. What I mean is, while you go to school, pursue your intelligent career, to become IQ, you have to also start learning how building your character to become a good leader. You have to learn, become emotional intelligent, how to work with people, how to deal with people. But also, you have to travel into your heart to start understand the strength and your weakness, your strength, and you have to understand how to combine all those three together. To become a good leader, you have knowledge, you have emotional intelligence, you understand people, how to work with people, but also you're strong in your heart. The most traveled road, long road is from your head to your heart. So I encouraging you, building your integrity, building your principle, have a golden rule and care for other people. Starting right now, when you're in college or when you're in high school, go to your local community and offer your service, offer your help. And I think that's important. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Thomas. That's great in Georgia. Like the majority of you, I was actually the first one born in the U.S. and coming from immigrant parents who were small business owners. So my parents were small business owners, my grandparents were small business owners, my great-grandfather was the first one to come to this continent. And they ended up settling in Mexico, actually. The first 12 years of my life, I ended up being there. Then, even though I was born in the U.S., and then later on, I started junior high, high school, college, those formative years in the U.S., speaking a different language, speaking different culture, and definitely quite a try-on time, but at the same time, a challenge. And more than anything else, I saw, in high school, you get involved in crowds, and I had an incredible opportunity to basically complain about the food at the cafeteria. Who remembers that? That's awful. It's awful. So that's how I kind of got involved in student government and running for office and, thinking, I can make a difference, which you can. I ended up not winning. I ended up losing by 10 votes. I'm actually extremely grateful for that. Because then I was appointed to basically represent the high school at the school board meetings. And I got to meet a future congressman there who became kind of that anchor for me, that person that basically was always on the lookout for you. He ended up actually, after that year that we served together, ended up going to the university as an assistant dean for Latino affairs. And at that point, it was my freshman year, so the only soul that I knew at college was that gentleman. He ended up being eventually a member of Congress, and I ended up getting involved in politics, which is an odd career in a way for, especially an immigrant family, because obviously our parents were always like concerned about making sure you had health care and making sure you had a steady job. And I ended up doing a lot of the grassroots organizing, which it's an incredible experience back in my home state. So needless to say, I've been in Washington about 15 years now, fast 15 years, basically starting out from the GS9 level, which, it's basically a special assistant to somebody. And it's an incredible position that you learn so much about, how government works. And eventually moving up. So I had the privilege of serving in this administration as chief of staff to 2 different cabinet agencies, and each one of them unique, from the small business side, hearing my family's concerns about small business, they kind of had my ear, and then now working for America's workers, and which is where I started first back 15 years ago. So for me, having an opportunity to work for Secretary Solis, who cares so much about, all workers, obviously, but especially coming from East LA. She cares about, making sure that the youth and minority communities, et cetera, get as much opportunities as possible. So for me, kind of breaking the bamboo ceiling has been about opportunity, about being seen by others as somebody capable of, basically managing and capable of communicating and delivering, and that has been kind of the bottom line. It's hopefully we'll discuss later on about strategies, but working for this administration has been an incredible opportunity, and not only it's been a handful and a trying couple of years, and we are doing our best to make sure that we advance, and get everybody advancing as much as possible.
So I actually just wanted to ask one more question, then I wanted to open it up to you all for Q&A and just really have this as a dialogue. But Thomas, you actually hit on this earlier, and you all clearly have incredible stories of how you got to where you are today. What other advice do you have for a lot of the college students in the crowd, a lot of recent graduates who are at the crossroads and might be worried about choosing what they want to do next? And they might feel conflicted about what they should do instead of what they want to do based on, what your parents think, what you think your major should be, maybe about the fiscal implications of your decisions, the economy. You're worried about what should be on your resume. So what other advice do you have for the youth, young AAPI leaders in the early stages of their career?
Well, what I have is follow your heart, your passion. And my wife would say, don't tell your daughter like that. But that's true. You have to follow your heart. And I told her that. I stand behind you. Important is in your career right now, if you can't define or you don't know what I would like to do, it's okay. Don't worry about that. Engage in community, because it's community. The people are going to define you, not you define people. And don't worry about the management skill. It's worry about how I can have a caring heart. And suddenly one day you wake up, you say, wow, I become a good leader. The leader is a character. It's not like in the book tell you 1, 2, 3, you have to do this, do that. That's an important book. Teach you all of those parameters to become a good leader. But the leader also from within, the inside. And I go backward. Back then, I really want to become political science, social science, journalism, or computer, or lawyer. But nobody accept me. But now I look back, I learned that if I starting more in the beginning as a liberal study, political science, you end up, you understand more how to serve in community more. And when you get a job, you go back to graduate school, now you know exactly what you want to learn and what you're going to study. Rather than I started an engineer first and I'm struggling. And I only speak for myself right now. But if you have your heart as a scientist, that's different. If you have your cut, you say, I want to become a scientist. That's important in society. We need those scientists as well. But if you don't know that yet, they don't let bother you. Engage immediately, concurrently. I speak earlier that concurrently while you go to school, reach out. Even you reach out to the high school, go to visit high school, form a group together, college, go to talk to those young high school and share with them your dream, your vision, and let them engage with college activity. So I think that's important. Yeah.
I was going to add to that. So, Thomas, you have a great, compelling story. And the follow your heart piece, I think, is something parents tell children, hopefully. And I think it's right. But I also think that we forget sometimes when we're following our hearts that every person you interact with, every job you have, no matter how closely related it feels to something you care about, is something that it helps you become who you are and also demonstrates to others who you are. So being who you are, real, in every situation, I think is very important, because every person you meet is someone who may come back to you in another form later in your life. I mean, the number of times, I think, as we go through our lives, and I think all of us are demonstrating, you don't start where you end, right? People look at someone who's achieved something that they think they want to be, and they think it's a straight line. There are no straight lines, especially now. I think people change jobs very frequently. They change interests, change disciplinary interests, go back to school. Some of you maybe are already in the second school that you were in, that you're not in the same school you started in. And I think it's everybody you meet along the way. Even when you're cleaning labs and you meet, a professor in the middle of the night who happens to be there late, that one interaction can change your life. So it's important to be who you are, and to remember that in every job you have the opportunity to lift your community. It isn't just the jobs that say, I'm a community activist, or I'm working with Asian American Alliance XYZ. Every interaction you have, there's a mirror. People are seeing you for what you are projecting, and for many of us, they see an Asian American first, or they see an Asian first. And I think whatever stereotype they attach to that, at some level you own. You really can't take it off. You're not going to take that off like your coat at the door and hang it up. So you are us, we are you. It's important that we are the best we can be for each other, as well as for ourselves and for our children and our parents. And I know that's a very Asian-esque kind of concept, but I do think it's what we have. And that's really important, because there's leadership and there's leadership styles, but we bring a tremendous amount to leadership through our culture. We bring a leadership of collaboration. We bring a leadership of listening before speaking. I mean, how many times have you been accused of being the quiet one? And it's not just because you're not speaking, it's because you're listening. Listening is a really important skill that a lot of people have to learn, and you may have learned it at home, and fortunate for you. And so we bring a lot to the table that is highly valued in the workplace and in our society, and we just have forgotten to label it sometimes and forgotten where it comes from. And I think so it's just very important that no matter where you end up, if you're following your heart and you're being who you are and you're remembering everything that you know about your culture and what's been imparted to you from family and friends, it will carry you far.
I definitely believe that, along with my two panelists here, it's something about, following your passions. And along with your passions, finding those challenges and learning from those situations. And more than anything else, it's the listening, it's the understanding, and I think also at the same time speaking up and getting your voice heard. And I've been extremely fortunate, and I think all of us have been in meeting that 1, 2, 3, 8, 12 people that have been instrumental in lifting you up and then you pay it forward. And we've been fortunate to be able to do that too. So I was trying to get into the administration back in 2008 once Senator Obama became president-elect. And it was about, basically knowing that one person who was basically looking out for you and being able to say, you can do this. And I'm like, get out of here, really? And definitely, it was a lot of prodding that evening. And then eventually said, fine, here's my resume, let's give it a go. And I was extremely fortunate to meet the person that was nominated for the Small Business Administration, who became an incredible influence for me. And we were able to work really well together for over 30 months before I came over to labor. And I think that that's something that you kind of keep with you. And I had many of those situations in my previous career, in my career, where it's all about, it's not only what you know, what you learn, it's also who you know and who has been influencing you and who has talked to you and who have you met. And so I definitely think that, one of the best sayings has been, if you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say it at all. that usually is true to itself. But hopefully we can give you more advice as Jason leads us here in the panel.
May I add one thing very important?
Please.
Well, I can talk with all of you forever. Because when I see you, I see myself. Like I say, the day I entered to the concentration camp, I'm 21 years old. And my youth stopped there. I lost all of my youth. But now, when I came to this country, my youth revived again, because you are the reason for me to move on and to move up and to speak it up. So one thing I want to add real quick is very important. You're living in a fast-paced world today. You got to have time for yourself. At the end of the day, please, spend your time in a quiet, when your sibling go to sleep, when your parent go to sleep, just quiet, find a place, what you call your dating place. Sit in there and just quiet and listen to your heart. 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you're amazing how happen next day. You recharge, you become wiser, you have more energy to move on. So don't move without stop, reflect, and referral to yourself. Very important. And the second thing I want to push real hard is be transformed, but not to conform to the standard of this world. Because you are the leader. Conformity make you become timid and move back because you're embarrassment. I'm afraid people think this about me, especially in high school, especially in college. When people do something you want to do different, be transformed. If you know something right, stand up and do it anyway. Even you know you were being ridiculed at. But that's okay, because you know you stand up for the right thing. So important, don't conform to something you know that's not right. Be transformed. You should be a catalyst for the changing world, that rather than be conformed to the world right now, we don't care for each other or whatever thing. So that's important.
So let's open it up to some questions for the audience. So if you all could just raise your hand, say your name, affiliation. Please keep your questions concise. Our board members from ICASA will hand you the mic. And for those of you watching at home, hi. You can tweet your questions to our Twitter handles at White House AAPI, at ICASU, and our hashtag AAPIWH, AAPI White House. So with that, are there any questions in the audience? I think we have. And make sure the mic is on and you speak into the microphone.
Can you hear me?
Great.
Yeah.
Hi. Domingo Juan from San Jose, California. I'm an intern for Congressman Mike Honda. Speaking for several non-citizens, as you can see, we have the pink badges. We obviously have legal barriers like voting. What can non-citizens do other than naturalization? Do you have any advice for us to be part of the political process as non-citizen aliens of this country?
If Domingo, again, you work for a great congressman. Actually, I love Congressman Honda.
I used to work for Congressman Honda too.
Yeah, you
Great,
see, there's a
great
big
guy.
fan base here. Hello, Congressman Honda. So I think that nothing prohibits you from getting involved in the political process. There's nothing wrong about going to a political headquarters and being able to say, I care about this candidate. Let me go and knock on some doors. Let me go and help you form policy. Let me go and just help you out. I think eventually, well, we'd love to see how you can get you involved and get you legalized and naturalized, et cetera. But in the meantime, though, nothing stops you from getting involved and being able to, again, help out and voice your opinion. I think that's the correct way to put it. I'm looking at council here.
I mean, I think you're right. That maybe the one thing you can't do is vote. But there's so much else. I mean, what is politics? What is being involved other than helping people understand? I mean, understanding education about what is going on is very important. And I think that's one person at a time, one conversation at a time sometimes, and sometimes hearing from people who are not citizens is maybe some of the most important information we can have, the perspectives we can have.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks for wanting to be involved.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Questions?
Let's not be shy.
Don't be shy. Yep, I think we have a question over here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lawrence. I attend the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm affiliated with AAPIs in Capal. My question is about mentorship. Mentorship has been a common thread in all of your stories, it seems. How do you put yourself in a position to find those people that can help influence you and put you on the path to where you want to be? What can you do to put yourself into that situation to find those people? Thank you.
So I would say, it's, I think, in the old days, we used to think of it as luck or as, someone, you just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And I think now many, many more people, and I think the three of us are examples, understand the role of mentorship and what I would call sponsorship, which is beyond just being a sounding board for you, but also really helping you by opening doors or connecting you. And I mean, the so-called informational interview is a really common tool now, and a week doesn't go by when I don't have somebody who I'm talking to that I've never met before that I meet in an audience like this or meet at another speaking engagement who will reach out and say, you said something really interesting, could I talk to you? I'm interested in something else, that you said. And so I think, it's asking. I hope will be very pleasantly surprised when you ask. So many people will respond positively because I think we all recognize the value of helping everyone, whether it's a next generation person or someone, as Thomas said, who's reinventing themselves later in life. I think we all understand the value of that, and part of the value of a group like this is so that you get to know each other as well, because you can also help each other through your own connections. But it's asking, and it's so much simpler than you might think.
May I add into that is to look for mentors is very important, and to find one is very easy. First is starting with a handshake. Go everywhere, and if you see another senior official or anyone in that crowd, don't hesitate. You move to the top line and just handshake and introduce yourself, and then may I have your phone? And then you call them. The second, start with a phone call. Say, can you become my mentor?
Thomas already did this to me. So.
And that's how to start. Like many years ago when I still GS 13, 14, I go to event and I see Secretary Mineta on far away. He's a keynote speaker. And people say, he's very busy, you can't go up there. And I go around the line. And I just shake hand and asking him become my mentor. So just start with your engagement, very important. And then looking for the mentor who different in the background with you, because they can complement and can counseling. Because the mentor is the teacher, is the guide, but also is a counselor and challenger. And as he said, you mentioned in your career, how you grow in your career based on who you know, but most importantly, who know you. You might know a lot of people, but the people who know you, they know your character, they know your commitment, they know your principle. You don't have to ask him. When the time comes, they will mention your name and they will drop your name, and then that's it, your career change right there. Mm-hmm. So important, introduce yourself and who know you, and act professional, act integrity, just be yourself, and don't worry to sell yourself. People will know you. So that's what I add on to that.
And hey, Lawrence, you belong to Capal. And it's a great organization where, especially based here in DC, I used to be one of the board members. And again, I had somebody who, was a mentor of mine, somebody who I looked up to, somebody who would open doors for me. It's, again, you can't be shy. You really have to do that seeking out yourself. And as Thomas said, somebody who's different, somebody who's doing something different, it could be an incredible beneficial for both of you, actually, for the mentor and the mentee. But getting involved in organizations, getting involved at the leadership level also, it just gives you more and more opportunities to meet a lot more people. You don't come to DC without a business card. That's the thought, because you're always handing it out. And that's definitely a plus. Mm-hmm.
So I actually wanted to take a question from Twitter. So we have Ben Fang 93. Ben from NYC wanted to ask, how can we get AAPI youth to be less apathetic and more engaged on campus and in our communities? So how do we engage, more of the AAPI apathetic youth?
Well, I think one of the, technology is an incredible tool. Technology, I think, it helps us reach out. Thanks, Ben, for the question. And it starts with you. It starts with people right here in this room who basically can help and reach out to 10 other people and talk to them about experiences such as this. I think that the more and more folks will reach out through summits like this helps basically get to folks who are apathetic. My brother, he's apolitical. Yet at the same time, though, he knows how important, because of my work, it is to pay attention once in a while. And so he'll go into Twitter. He'll go into, my Facebook page, where I post stuff. And he kind of gets informed. Now, he doesn't just look at mine and just blindly follow me. He definitely challenges me. He's an engineer working at a defense contractor. He is back home in Arizona, far away, yet at the same time, though, locally, and if you guys have followed your politics, the news in Arizona, it's an incredibly hot state, and not only the weather. But there's a lot of issues going on there. And so we have quite a dialogue. I think it kind of helps if you guys kind of help us out, spread the word out. But again, the key is hitting that issue where youth, apathetic AAPI youth, are concerned about. And, so you need to help us define what that also may be. But I think the first thing that we're all worried about is jobs and where we're going in the future. And I think that's something that definitely you can check us out at dol.gov, and we can talk about the jobs of the future, the jobs that we are looking at, the trends that we see in trying to help you in your careers as you're shaping your education. So I definitely encourage you to check our websites out, and at the same time help us spread the word.
So, implicit in the question, I think, is that getting involved has something to do with fighting discrimination, or self-identifying as Asian American, or thinking of us as a group that needs to band together to do something. And it's going to sound very old-fashioned, but I think there's a level of consciousness raising that happens while you're in college. There's wherever you are in your identity journey, it's probably going to be more intensified while you're in college. And lucky if it is, because it's harder, actually, I think, when you get out of college to find people who will enter into that discussion with you. And so I don't know if it really motivates young people anymore to get involved. I certainly know from another generation that that's what drew us in, was the opportunity to really talk to others who were experiencing life, because racially we experience life in many of the same ways. And it's, as I said earlier, it's not something you can take off at the door. And I think as people, as each of us, no matter where we are in our careers or our lives, recognizes that it is a bonding, and it is helpful as you grow in your careers, in your lives, in your character, to have that outside your family to really talk about. And maybe that's the core of the question is how do you get people to be less apathetic about their own identities or about how they walk through life. And I don't know that you can rush it, but I do think if you as a group of activists yourselves are already on a path and it's attractive, that people see the value, you will attract people. So it's maybe less about encouraging others so much as setting a standard that it becomes attractive to others. And also I think each of us has to be open to entering that conversation at a different point. You can be 40 and starting to enter into your own identity questions. You can put it off for a pretty long time and not really confront it. And I think we have to be gracious enough to be open to people who are coming to it later or earlier than we did. Because I think that's also something that happens to people as they get shut out. They marry people who don't look like us, they adopt children who don't look like us, and then our community starts to shut them out, and that's also not what we want to be.
Let me add on to that how to engage the other AAPI if they're less civically engaged. I think here is the Asian culture you need to activate. What I mean is you have passion, you have enthusiasm what you do, and that's very contagious. So when you see those people, they not engage or involved, maybe because they don't know what's existing out there. You need to expose them and invite them, but however, don't preaching them. Don't try to talk everything you know. When you come to people, they only like it when you're asking for their opinion and for advice. So that's where the humility come in, where the humble come in. Rather than you come, you say, I know this, I know that, and you talk 10 minutes about what you know, what you have been doing. You just approach them, you're asking them, I'm doing this and this coming week, have very important meeting, and I know that you're very good at this, and I met you and I see you before. Would you please come with me to this and render your opinion or do some assessment and share with me what you think? People, they love it when you give them a role and you make them feel important, and they will come, they pay attention, everything, and they come back, they share back to you. And in no time, they get contagious what you're doing, and they will become running right on your side without even you try to drag them with you. So starting with that, asking people advice, building trust to people. To work with people, the first thing you have to build trust. You have to let people know, that they can trust you, that they come to you with no harm, you have no harm for them. How to do that with three simple steps to building trust with anyone you don't know yet. At first is make people feel important, and I just talk about that. The second thing, make people feel good about themselves and value their thought, and that I just mentioned about that too. That asking their opinion, asking their advice. And then the third thing is create success for them. That means you have to step down and willing to let them step up to the podium. We'll then let them step up and recognize them. And when you do that with that individual, they will feel so close, so trust to you. And now you get another friend, you get another activist with you. So that's what I have.
Great. So why don't we take a couple more questions from the audience? I think I saw a hand in the back, in the very back. The girl with the glasses right there.
Hi, my name's Annie. I'm a recent graduate of Columbia and a new teacher in Chicago. I had a question about discrimination in the workplace, especially where you all work. How has of course you are all Asian American standing in front of me, and I wonder how discrimination plays a role in either your current work or your past work as a person in public service and how you dealt with that. I feel like there's not necessarily overt discrimination in a lot of workplaces, but there's a lot of stereotypes that play into our work, and I was wondering about that. Thank you.
Well, working at the Department of Labor, we definitely take discrimination in the workplace as one of our top issues. And in the personal experience, obviously it's sometimes it is felt, sometimes it's not. I think that, having Secretary Solis, the first Latina cabinet member, has helped a lot in the culture throughout, not only our department, but also throughout the federal agency. I think this administration has definitely put in, basically has had quite a number of folks in high-level positions where, it's all about learning curves and understanding each other. at the department, even educating folks within is step-by-step process. And I think that definitely it's a trying period, but we can just move forward and educate folks. And I think that that is key, and recognizing what the signs are. It's important.
I just want to add a little bit from my own experience is nowadays it's much less. You see the evidence of clearly of the discrimination. However, there's subliminal you feel it there, but you can't explain it. You know, example like when I go to interview for a job, many times I want to become senior level manager. I always, out of 250 applicants or 180, I always do the 2 finalists. Only the second 2 finalists. And when I walk out of the room, whoever the second or the first walk out behind me, and if I tell my wife, she says, you're not gonna get that job. Because the comfort factor, if that person is tall, Caucasian, and young, and you have an Asian, you know, and, you know, short, it's not about discrimination, it's about the comfort factor. They feel comfortable to pick that person because the index factor make them feel more comfortable. That's about it. So that's how I feel. And I keep go back until I get it. And don't let deter you. Or when you go to when I accept the job as a SES as well, you go to the conference room. There is the gentleman, he tall, and he is one of my assistant, and he's Caucasian. He walk in the room, people think that is the new director. They say, wow. When 6 feet tall walk in and Caucasian, that's the leader. That's a leader. When you walk in, they say, it's not a leader, right? But you don't have it until you prove it. They have it until they lose it. So be yourself. You be yourself. And in the table, I'm listening. In the meeting table, I don't talk right away. I'm listening to everybody say. And then at the end, I put in my statement or my vision, what I think we should do. And people say, where you get that? You know, they're always asking. Other people say they may not answer that question, but then they say, that's great, but where you get that? But finally, they respect you with your vision, your knowledge, and you be yourself. So don't let that shy you. Put your idea on the table, and people start amazing that what you think. I tell them, you know, I speak English, might have a foreign accent, but I can think in English, you know, and I can smile and laugh in English. I told them that too, so they laugh. But be yourself, that's important, and don't be shy.
So I was just going to say, you know, we don't talk about discrimination that much anymore because I do think there's a sense that we've come a long way. But I can't agree more with Thomas that it's, you know, discrimination is really about perceptions. And the stereotype, which sounds like not such a bad thing, is actually a bad thing. And I think, you know, at an individual level, it's not just being who you are, but actually talking to people about who you are. It's the relationships you build. I always say, you know, even someone who honestly is prejudiced against people on the basis of race makes exceptions, right? They always say, oh, well, I have a blank friend, right? Whatever, fill in the blank. I have a friend. And it's true, right? They found a person who's actually of that race that they like, they respect, but it's an exception. It's not the whole, they don't make the stereotype to the whole race, like, oh, maybe my assumptions are wrong, because I actually know this person of that race and they're fabulous. So, you know, we have a whole set of stereotypes which is confusing, and Asian American as a category, you know, has changed a great deal over the last 20 years as immigration has changed a great deal. And many of you, I'm suspecting, maybe are biracial, or you have friends who are biracial, or you're an adoptee and the rest of your family isn't Asian. And so we are complicated now. We're not, you know, even among ourselves, we're no longer a stereotype. And we have to help tell that story. And that's how you break down true prejudice and discrimination. Unfortunately, it's sort of one by one, but it's the importance of being who you are is also communicating that to people that you think maybe are making assumptions, not even about you. You might be their exception, but it's about the other people who look like you. And it's speaking up. And, you know, in my early era, it was actually calling out people when they would tell sexist or racist jokes. we had to learn to do that, to say, I won't stand for that. I mean, it's just, I'm not going to laugh with everybody else. And at now, hopefully, we're well beyond that. But there are times when that's the analogy. Someone will say something, do something, display an attitude. And I do think we all have a responsibility to break that down, even if it hasn't cost someone a job at the moment. It can later on.
Great. So let's take one more question. Someone from this side, right here.
Hi there, my name's Coco. I'm from California State University Northridge, and I'm currently affiliated with myself. This question is particularly for the women on the panel. Georgie kind of talked about this a little bit, but how do you deal with the issue of being a woman, especially an Asian American woman, dealing with a workforce that they pride or value a lot of confidence and aggressiveness, but as a woman you're seen as being too much of a ball buster, to be honest, and that can often be really negative. So how do you deal with being aggressive and confident and self-sure of yourself and going out there without being seen as a negative factor? Thank you.
I think it's about how you communicate with folks. You can seem strong, yet at the same time kind. I think it has kind of the way you talk to folks, the way you deal with not only the upper echelons but also the lower echelons. It's about the everyday acts of kindness. I think also it kind of tells of who you are. But yes, most of the time there is a stereotype, I think. And you try, not necessarily to fight it. I think it's about your leadership style, and I've been able to kind of lead by example, and being able to say, being able to manage folks and talk to individuals with straightforwardness. I think that helps, and that's kind of understanding what your reputation is, and talking to folks.
Yeah, I guess I would say, it's not buying into a stereotype, right? I mean, anyone who would say that just because you're an assertive woman, that's a negative quality, and I'll use the term assertive as opposed to aggressive, because I think anyone who's aggressive, man or woman, and truly aggressive in a setting is probably doing something that's going to affect their careers negatively. But if you turn that word into being assertive, when you have something important to say, or it depends whether you're outside your positional power or not. Positional power has a lot to do with how assertive or aggressive one can be. And I have to say, I've had the great fortune of always having some fairly significant positional power in most of my jobs. But I think even without it, it's important to know when it's the right thing to assert authority and when it's not the right thing, and that has a lot to do with context. But if you feel, I would say, if you have felt mislabeled, or you feel that there's a buzz around you, which is mislabeling, no matter who you are, man or woman, Asian or not, I think in the workplace it's really important to understand that perception and to deal with it, to either ensure that you're not doing what people are labeling as such, if you don't think you are, or correcting a behavior if you think, because I do think the overly aggressive, so-called ball-busting behavior is behavior which will not actually stand you well in the workplace over the long term.
Thank you for that question. So I just wanted to end by saying thank you again to our panelists. But also, a lot of people say that the youth are the future. You hear it a lot, that we're the next generation. But we also need to realize that we're the present too. So what final advice do you have, closing remarks, if you could take about 30 seconds to a minute, what final advice do you have for the youth? As they go through today's summit, they talk about within our different workshops, bullying, higher education, careers in the federal government. As we conclude today, and as you all go back into your communities, campuses, what final advice do you have for them as they continue to advocate on behalf of the needs of the AAPI community?
Well, I would say just follow your passions. Find something that you're passionate about, that issue, that topic, and run with it. And I think that that has served a lot of us well. Let me tell you, there's never a boring day.
I add on real quick is continue to learning and to frame yourself to become a virtuous and integrity leader, because that's a very important character in today's marketplace, today's environment. We need to have more virtuous leader, and a virtuous leader can sum up in 4 things, and you earn it and you grow through your tribulation and tests. Life is being tested. You will be tested, and you will go through up and down your life, but you will become a strong leader with a character is prudence. Through life, you will earn the prudence. And second is always have a heart of justice, being fair, being care for other people. The third is courage. You have to be courage. Don't timid. Have to go out there and stand up and move forward. And the last is self-control. If you look in today's leadership, they fail just because they lack of one of those 4. Prudent, justice, courage, and self-control. So that's the last word I have. You have, and try to building up that in your career, in your life. And when you become a leader, people will see you through that, your action.
Tom, it's a hard act to follow. I would say don't let yourself get boxed in to someone else's definition of you. I know especially at this point in your life, you've had a lot of parental influence, other adult influence, mentors, thesis advisors. Everyone has a view of you, and now is actually your time to figure out what is your view of yourself and what is it that you stand for, that you want to be. So, listen hard to what other people say to you, especially people who knew you as children, because they probably know the purest you there is. And but also think in terms of, what is it that I want, and don't let yourself get boxed in or guilted into something. Find that passion. I think we've all said that in different ways. It's your life's energy to use, and you only get it once.
Great. So let's give another round of applause to our panelists. So thank you all for sharing your stories. Clearly, you have incredible stories for helping us continue to break the bamboo ceiling. And we're excited for, the next 3 of you all one day to be here on this panel talking about your experiences.